Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 241 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where, well, we would generally advise you to not pick up strange things, especially if they're laying by the highway.
Even if Minas Tirith is falling and you alone could yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, exactly. I get it.
Folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room. I'm Sean Marchese, the Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, who puts himself forward as being the older and the hardier, Alan Sisto.
Well, both are true. All right. Maybe just the one.
I was going to say,
just the one.
I think we all know which one of those is true.
Well, I think math tells us which one of those is true. All right. Well, folks, today we are going to put on our blindfolds and walk through the woods with strangers in the third of 5 episodes on The Window on the West.
Why does it sound dirty when you say it?
What are you talking about? What?
Really? Okay. All right, man. Sure. You want to play it that way?
I mean,
all right.
It's just blindfolds.
Okay. Sure.
Strangers. Yeah.
Blindfolds, woods, strangers. What could go wrong?
What could indeed. All right.
All right. Well, folks, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Tolkien's stories of Middle-earth, a few pages at a time.
We dive into the details. We point out connections to other writings. We talk about our favorite themes.
But we also make sure we have a lot of fun along the way. So we're glad you've joined us.
And we know you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get into the chapter tonight, we have a very special guest joining us.
Dave Brons is a guitarist and music composer from the UK who writes and records prog rock with a Celtic symphonic twist.
So you knew we had to get him on our show. I mean, just with that right there,
Oh,
prog
totally.
rock with a Celtic symphonic twist. Hello.
That's literally our Spotify playlists. I mean,
Seriously.
That's basically what it is.
Anyway, didn't mean to interrupt you, Sean. Go ahead.
So after placing in the top 16 guitarists in the world in the Global Guitar Idol competition in 2014, he released his debut solo album, based on a true story, in 2015. But as a fan of both guitar shredding and Tolkien's works, well, the best was yet to come.
That's right, because in 2020, Dave released his second album, Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost. As you might guess from the title and from the fact that he's here with us, that second album was inspired by Dave's love for Middle-earth, a collection of 14 tracks meant to be listened to as a single piece. Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost transports the listener to Middle-earth by covering the story of Tolkien's legendarium from the Ainulindale down to Frodo's passing into the West. And I've got to say, Sean and I love it.
Yeah, it's been
fantastic.
Just constantly playing in my ears. It's wonderful stuff. And look, folks, this last album got stellar reviews from a variety of music press outlets. Dutch Progressive Rock Page said it works on every level. Metal Planet Music called it astoundingly good. And Prog Radar called it a delight for the ears and a bit of a revelation.
Yeah.
But Dave did not rest on his laurels. In December 2021, he launched an Indiegogo campaign for his third album, Return to Arda, which promises to, well, return listeners to Arda through his music, which sounds quite all right to me.
Well, you left out the best part, Sean. He launched that Indiegogo campaign in December and met his goal in less than 48 hours. So
wow.
Good job. Congratulations on that. And we'll be talking about that new album as well as the previous one as soon as we actually give Dave a chance to talk. So let's do that now. Dave Brons, welcome to the Prancing Pony podcast.
Hello. That's the most amazing intro I've ever had in my life. Thank you so much.
You're very
welcome. I should say I'm a long-time fan, but this is the first time guest. So thanks so much for having me on the show. Well, I say a long time. Actually, I've been listening for about a month since you guys contacted me, and I just want to say it's a huge honor to be invited on the show. I've enjoyed the podcast so much. I've been looking forward to escaping to Middle-earth, and I've learned so much, guys. Every time I tune in, I learn something new, and it's just a real joy to be able to tune into the podcast every week. So thanks so much for getting me on, and also thanks for doing what you do. Amazing.
It's truly our pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I can't wait
It really is.
to talk to you about the music. And just thanks so much for listening to the show. And by the way, listeners, before Alan jumps into the first question here, I want to say that the tune that you listened to at the start of this segment was The Shire, A Long Expected Party, which is the 6th track from Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost.
Mm-hmm.
Tell you more about where to get that later on.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, you have listened to the show, so you already know this is your first time on the Prancing Pony podcast, and we're going to ask you the question we ask everybody who comes on. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's work? What was it like for you, and what kept you coming back?
Okay, so I would have read the Lord of the Rings books when I was 12. And what happened is I'm from England, and I grew up in a farm in the Shire, Lancashire to be precise. And my parents moved out to southern Spain, and my parents worked with the church out there with unemployed people and with the gypsy community and so on.
Wow.
And there were some things we couldn't get in Spain. So peanut butter, tea bags, and English books. So,
wow.
So whenever I got sent books, they were just a real treasure. And so I got sent the first book of the trilogy. And the cover had it was the one with the winding road, through the mountains, sort of painted on the cover. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah.
And for me, having grown up on a farm before moving out to Spain, it just sort of really, just seeing the cover sort of piqued my interest. Thought, I wonder what this is like. And as soon as I started reading, I loved how Tolkien's never in a rush. I loved the descriptions of nature. I was intrigued by the languages. And for me, it just really transported me back to where I'd come from. As much as I love southern Spain, it's dry. And, it's a very different kind of place to where I'd grown up initially. So,
sure.
And, so that's how I discovered it. In terms of what keeps coming me back, man, it's as I'm sure you guys appreciate, it's really hard to put into words how profound the impact of Tolkien's writing is. But for me, it's more than a story. It's wisdom. It's deeply spiritual kind of book for me, to be honest. So I read it every few years, probably all three.
I think the more we ask people that question, that's so often what it is, right? It's just it's more than a story. It becomes a home. It becomes a way of helping you make sense of the world, even though it's a fantasy. And I think I
loved the way you put it when you said that you loved how Tolkien was never in a rush. I love the way you put that. I don't think I've heard anybody say that quite that way, but that's so true. He takes his time getting to the story, doesn't he?
I do, and I think I do wonder if Tolkien would get published now, because every book has to be a page turner. But the thing with Tolkien that I found when I first read it, I mean, to bear in mind I was only 12 and I didn't read The Hobbit first. I went straight for the big one.
Oh wow! Nice.
It's just. He takes such care of the descriptions in a way that you become immersed. And I'm sure that's why people want to return again and again to Middle-earth through the books, because the level of detail and the fact that he just really takes his time. Yeah. So it's definitely stood out to me when I first read it, for sure.
Yeah. No, that's a great insight. All right. Well, let's talk about that first album that was inspired by Tolkien, your second album overall, but the first that was inspired by Tolkien, 2020's Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost. What made you decide to start writing and recording music inspired by Tolkien? I mean, obviously you'd been a fan for most of your life, but what made you decide, you know what, I'm going to do this?
Well, I'm a linguist by training, a composer by trade, and I live in the Shire, so it kind of felt like it was inevitable.
Yeah, that is.
It was stacked up against me. So actually, the truth is that I often found myself returning to reading the books when I didn't feel too well. It's kind of like chicken soup for the soul for me. So
it's definitely a comfort book, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And so I'd quit my well-paid job to be a full-time musician sort of in my 30s. And I think my mental health was I was taking a bit of a beating because it's such a hard choice to make, and I was feeling a bit blocked. So I did what I often do. I I got my hammock and my tarp, and I went up to the Lake District, climbed up a mountain, and pitched up kind of on a cliff. And I just threw the Lord of the Rings book in my backpack, and so I was just overlooking a view. It was raining. The rain was running off my tarp. I'm reading Lord of the Rings, and I was kind of started thinking, what is it about the Lord of the Rings story that makes me kind of feel better? And then it just seems so obvious now looking back, but I just thought at the time, I wonder if I can make some music that will sort of transport listeners away from the stress they feel and into sort of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So that by listening to the music, it's almost like a shorthand for reading the book. It's like you can have that Lord of the Rings experience just by putting your headphones on. So that was kind of the beginning of that journey, and then started my realization that it was going to be a pretty ambitious undertaking. So, but I mean, the album went on to sell really well, and as you guys said on the intro, so I think it turned out to be a great choice for me and sort of my career. Yeah.
What an amazing story.
That's
I can almost see that vision from underneath your tarp looking out over the Lake District in the pouring rain and reading The Lord of the Rings. What a moment that must have been when that sort of struck you, like, okay, I want to do this.
It was really, it's kind of that cliche of going to the wilderness to kind of find your way. And the answer was just something I hadn't considered I always put the book in my backpack.
Yeah.
So I should have realized before I went, but it just totally. So I came back down off the mountain a bit like a Tolkien-inspired Moses with the idea of what I was going to do.
You got the Lord of the Rings in one hand, the Silmarillion in the other, and you hold them up. And, these are your commandments, people.
Yes, the guitar's got to be somewhere in there, right?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the guitar, you describe your musical style as prog rock with a Celtic symphonic twist, and that is certainly the sound that comes through. Tell us a little bit about how you achieve that blend of the traditional Celtic, but with that epic scale and virtuosity of modern prog rock. What kinds of instruments do you use? How you compose that sort of thing? Truth is, neither of us are musicians, but I think we have a lot of musicians in our audience who are going to love to hear those technical details.
Yeah. So, well, like I've already said a few times, my goal is to uplift the listener and transport them to Middle Earth. So I kind of decided in order to tell this story properly, I had to start at the beginning. So I actually bought the Silmarillion and started reading it on the plane. I was going to the NAM show in LA, which is a big music show. Los Angeles, and I read the Ainulindale for the first time, and I was blown away. I was like, "This is it. This is how I'm going to do it. This is the key." I just couldn't believe that Tolkien had written as music being the origin of the universe. What a gift to me! So that's where the ideas for the sort of composition started with the melody of Ilúvatar, voices. It had to be choir. There had to be some dissonance in there. And from there, the whole sort of seed of the album and the story arc was planted. So while I was on the plane, I wrote what I thought would be a good melody for Ilúvatar's song. And then I went to weave that melody into every kind of song. Because actually, when I was listening to your podcast on the Ainulindale, you talked about the flame imperishable. And so I just really like the idea of that, of Ilúvatar's song being present in all of the creation through the album. So it's actually in every song hidden somewhere. So that's how the inspiration for the album kind of got going. In terms of the instruments, it's prog rock, so drums, guitars, and bass and keys. And then there's the classical influence, so borrowing a bit of Howard Shore in there. So there's some Holst and 20th century classical influence in there. So we got real orchestral players on there. There's a 100-piece choir. So it was it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun writing it. Yeah,
I bet that must have been incredible. I mean, like you said, overwhelming in scope, right? I mean, it just looking at this humongous project now and realizing it's got to match the scale of what Tolkien did.
Well, it's certainly try. I don't know if I'll ever match.
Well, but I mean, that was the goal at least. Yeah, pretty impressive.
I mean, I knew I needed to start with the Ainulindale, and I knew I wanted to leave Middle Earth at Grey Haven. So because there's the musical connection there as well. That's my actual favorite Tolkien passage, where he talks about the singing came over the water and the grey rain curtain peeled back and beyond But yeah, I just really love that as well. So then in terms of musician, I just knew that I had to fill the gaps in. So
yeah.
And there's a variety of ways I do that. I sing. Everything starts from me singing. I don't play on the guitar. I tend to sing it into my iPhone. And then if I got a good melodic idea, I'd arrange it around that. Or I might go to the books and read. Certainly with the Silmarillion, I read it a lot and tried to have 1, 2, 3 themes, some dissonance, and try and follow that kind of thing. So the inspiration came from both ends, I guess.
Okay.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
I love it. And I love, I have noticed that one melody that keeps repeating throughout the album. And it must be, the like you said, that's the Song of Iluvatar. And it's like just as Tolkien said, right, that the music is just woven into the fabric of Arda. And it just makes sense that it would keep repeating. And I think that's amazing stuff.
And the other thing I love about Tolkien is this idea of flame imperishable, and sort of Iluvatar is involved. The flame imperishable is in everything, in all creation.
Yeah.
And the spark of that creation being in everything. And also how he talks about, evil being a corruption of good and a corruption of light. So there's a lot of those themes in the album as well. In fact, I quote a little bit from the Children of Húrin as well. In some of the songs. I think I quote it was the battle cry of the Edain when he says flame light flee night, that kind of thing. I think I don't pronounce, well, I'll have a go at pronouncing it, Lacho Kalad Drego Morn. So I thought that was great, and I put that into some of the songs as well.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, plenty of inspiration there for sure. Yeah.
Well, so yeah, I mean, you've already kind of hinted at a couple of your inspirations in the composition, but talk to us a little more about that. Who are some of your big musical inspirations, either for this album or just in general, the way you play? Who are your Celtic inspirations, prog rock inspirations, or anyone else? You mentioned a couple of classical ones a moment ago.
Yeah, sure. So for me, the guy who made me want to start playing guitar is a guy called Steve Vai.
Oh, yeah.
So he's kind of like the Iluvatar of shredders.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
I remember listening to a lot of Steve Vai. Yeah.
So he put an album out called Passion and Warfare in the early 90s. And that was that was my kind of musical equivalent of my Tolkien moment, where I found, like, I heard the music that I sort of wish I'd written myself, like it kind of changed everything. So I picked up the guitar from there. On the Celtic side, there's a band called Iona. They're a Celtic prog band from here in the UK. And they put out an album called Book of Kells, which is just hugely influential. You might not have heard of them, but I definitely recommend trying to find them. Then there'd be modern prog rockers like Dream Theater in there. And on the classical side, I'm a massive fan of Holst, Shostakovich and Stravinsky. So all the kind of the 20th century guys. And all that stuff is, well, I definitely took the last album, Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost, as an opportunity to try and kind of get all those influences into my music. So that was a lot of fun trying to do that.
Excellent. Well, maybe tell us a little bit about that creative process, right? How do you start? And then this is me as not a musician, right? So, but how do you start composing a new musical piece based on Tolkien? Is it, I mean, obviously you said like kind of the inspiration for the album came from just sort of reading the book and thinking to yourself, I kind of want to do this. But for an individual song, is it like that? You reading the book and you say, okay, let me do this story? Or do you just like start jamming and think like, this sounds like Minas Morgul or, whatever other songs that are on the album?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I guess for me, I'm always trying to transport the listener to Middle Earth. So I'll start by imagining the scene in a film, and then I'll probably try and hear the whole arrangement, or I'll sing a melody into my iPhone and record it, and then put it onto my computer and start arranging sort of strings or drums or whatever. I even sing the drum parts in. So that'd be where I'd start. There's other songs where I definitely were more text based. So for the Ainulindale, I definitely read the text multiple times and thought, how can I get the first or the second theme of Iluvatar in there? How can I add some of the dissonance in from when that happens?
Yeah, for Melkor,
For Melkor. And so So I guess it's those two ways. And then obviously I don't just write all the music. I have my bandmates, they co-write with me as well. So I take my idea to them. We do the usual thing of, they're all Tolkien fans as well, which is great. So yeah, between the three of us, then we sort of came up with stuff that way, really. Yeah.
I'd say you did.
Definitely.
Well, Dave, we want to talk a little bit now about the new album that's coming out soon, Return to Arda. First off, congratulations on an amazingly successful crowdfunding campaign. That is amazing.
That's got to feel good.
That really does.
It was a real surprise, to be honest. It blew me away. Yeah.
Well, and now you're going to have a lot more listeners, hopefully, and that means your next project will probably be hitting its targets in a week or two. But tell us a little bit, how is this new album different from the previous one?
So with Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost, I really wanted to tell the story from the Ainulindale to Leaving the Grey Havens. Return to Arda was really born out of lockdown, having no gigs, being stuck in my house, and not being able to travel to all the places that I love to go. I spend a lot of time wild camping and getting out in nature. And so I just wanted to write an album inspired by the places of Middle-earth, not necessarily the stories. So the album is a collection of songs. It's split into 3 parts: sea, soil, and sky.
Okay.
So yeah, obviously for the sea, you've got the links to the Silmarillion there with Ulmo, and then there's the soil, sky. You'd have we've got tunes about the eagles and sort of rising above it all. But yeah, it's also inspired by the old Celtic Christian worldview, which was that our planet is the cathedral of earth, sea, and sky, sort of linking back into the Christian worldview of Tolkien. So there's sort of multiple connections there, really. But I mean, it's a great inspiration, because obviously for the water, I'm going to quote the bits from Silmarillion. It's said by the Eldar that in water there yet lives the echo of the music of the Ainur more than in any substance in this earth. That passage again about the music. For the soil, I've just written a little line: soil, the life beneath our feet, where the first and last breath meet to kindle the sparks of the flame imperishable. So that's about connection to creation.
Wow.
And sky is just that famous bit, where Sam is looking up at the stars and talks about the shadow's only a small and passing thing. There is light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. And just thinking about, sometimes for me, looking up at the sky or looking down from high helps you get a perspective on things when you don't know the way forward. So, when you're high above, everything seems small. So it's an album of hope and transporting people to the beautiful places on Middle Earth, and hopefully this planet as well. It's a different vibe, really. Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing. And as I was looking at the track listing on Indiegogo, because all 12 tracks are named there. And I was thinking, like, it looks a little bit more abstract, but now as you're saying that, I'm seeing like exactly
those themes
where you're going with each one of these tracks, which is super cool. At least maybe 1 or 2 story ones on there. It looks like you've got a Beren and Luthien song there in the soil bit, right?
Yeah, that's right. Beren and Luthien, there's a piano part that the drummer John wrote, and I was like, man, that's Beren and Luthien. That's the love story. It had a beautiful melody. So yeah, sometimes you just got to go where the inspiration takes you a little bit, and then we've got On Eagle's Wings as well, which is obviously it just jumped out at me that it has to be that, sometimes you can just tell. So you've kind of got to, when you're trying to write a concept album, you do have to leave some room for the music to do its thing and the stories to just jump out at you. Otherwise it can become a bit artificial, where you're trying to force
things into a particular theme or concept.
So definitely try to avoid that.
And yet it works so well, because I'm thinking of him like, well, Beren and Luthien going underground to Angband and everything. I mean, it's perfect, It's so
my
goodness.
Cool. One of my favorite stories. That
really, I could read it over and over and over again, and
we do. That's the thing, we do. I think we'd probably read more often if we weren't busy doing the podcast. I mean, you mentioned reading The Lord of the Rings every couple of years. I used to read it every year, but now that we're doing this super close reading, it's not something that I get to do quite as often because I'm usually buried in the current volume. But
yeah. And yet, don't you feel like in a certain way, Alan, like we're just like kind of always in it? We're just,
and it's wonderful. I love that.
We don't have to go back to Lord of the Rings because we're always there. We're
always
living
in it. It's great.
Between the community discussions on wherever we are in the story and stuff.
And so many places in the story take you back to earlier places.
Yeah, that's true.
So you do end up, especially as we prepare for the episodes, we end up doing that. But
yep.
Well, Dave, with Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost, you mentioned earlier that you worked with a large group of musicians, right? You talked about the 100-piece choir. I think that we also read something about a 20-piece percussion group. Is Return to Arda going to be similar? And I mean, you are working with some of the same musicians to bring this new album to life, right?
Yeah, so we have Catherine Ashcroft on the Ullum pipes. Those are the sort of like Irish bagpipes.
Right, yep.
That are just super. It's my favorite instrument outside the guitar. So she's back on. Dave Bainbridge from Iona. He's a really well-respected prog musician. He's involved as well. Possibly going to get the choir on, but it's going to be slightly less orchestral, this album, and more ambient. There's a lot more space to breathe, and in terms of the listener, there's bigger pauses in the music and contemplative sort of room, if you like. So it's perhaps not quite as progressive as last album, but and there's no sort of, we don't go to Minas Morgul or anything like that. So there's no sort of darkness in this album. It's all light, it's all hope, uplifting all the way through. So
I'm already looking forward to this one.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Speaking of looking forward to it, when are you hoping to have this album released?
The aim is to have it out vaguely in spring. It's not just dependent on me. It's mostly recorded. I'm just going through all the lead parts, trying to fight my perfectionism and get it done. Next week, I've got a sax player called Dave Fitzgerald coming to play on. I've never had sax on my music before, so that's going to be a real treat.
Cool. Yeah.
So we're getting close to it being done. But rather than giving a definite date, I'll just vaguely say in the next month or two.
All right.
Be out.
That's exciting.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, listeners, that we'll be letting you know the minute it's out.
We will. Absolutely.
Probably telling you all about it because we'll get it ourselves. So, yeah.
Dave, we're connected on Facebook now. Feel free to, let us know when it's out there on your page, and we'll make sure
come to our social medias and make the announcement yourself. Perfectly happy to have you do that as well.
I've popped into the page already and had done a bit of stalking. See what's going on. So I'll definitely drop by.
All right.
We're glad to have you there. Well, looking ahead beyond the new album, maybe too early to say, but I don't know. Is there a story from the Legendarium or a place in Middle Earth that you haven't yet captured with just the right musical theme that you'd like to?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so many stories, isn't there? I mean, how do you choose, right? I think one of my favorite stories in the Legendarium is Turin.
Yeah.
Turin and Beleg. It's kind of like a Shakespearean tragedy almost, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah.
That'd be quite a different album, I think. But I'd like to possibly look at that, and then maybe revisit some of the stories in the Silmarillion as well. Would be interesting. But I've got my mind full of the current album at the moment, so I'm not sure I have the mental capacity. But I think I'll be sticking with the Tolkien theme now. It's just there's so much inspiration in it. I think I can see me releasing many albums based on Tolkien for sure. Yeah,
I can see that too.
Well, that sounds great to us. So
we're excited, and we know we'll be listening to them for sure. So
fantastic. Thanks so much.
Once again, Dave, thank you so very much for joining us here today. It has been a real pleasure.
The pleasure's been all mine, honestly. Fantastic. Hey, I'm going to say a word that I learned on the podcast. Is it Namarie?
Namarie, yes.
Namarie. Yeah. Farewell.
So farewell, and may the blessing of elves and men and free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces. There you go. Blessing from Elrond.
Thank you. That is so sweet.
Thank you, Dave.
I love that.
Thank you, Dave. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
And listeners, you can find Dave Brons' music online, including some free tracks at davebrons.com. That's DAVEBRONS.com. You can also find his music and some cool merchandise for sale at davebrons.bandcamp.com. And be sure to follow Dave Brons Music on Facebook.
Yep. And with that, folks, we'll return you to the podcast in progress.
Well, folks, we sincerely hope you enjoyed that. Dave has been an absolutely fantastic guy to get to know, and we hope you'll do yourself a favor and check out his music. And keep an eye out in our social media spaces, because he's actually made 1 or 2 appearances around the PPP community since we first reached out to him. Been pretty cool to talk to him. Now, we are about to get back to the text and see someone else make an unexpected appearance. But before we do that, we actually have a little addendum to a recent episode.
Yeah, I think so.
See, after episode 237 was released, we got a message from our old friend Arthur H. about Frodo's apparent misquote of the ring verse. Arthur said, "It has always troubled me that Frodo says, 1 ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them." This is when Frodo is trying to convince Gollum that, he shouldn't swear on the ring lightly.
Yeah, he's kind of threatening him and intimidating him a little bit.
Exactly.
With this,
And he says,
rightly so.
1 ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. Arthur says the actual quote is 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, which of course is absolutely correct. Arthur says we kept referring to this as the Ring poem. He says, "I don't know if I have heard at any point of anyone discussing the fact that this is a misquote." What are your thoughts on that, Alan?
Well, as it turns out, we did not mention that in the episode, and we probably should have. The inscription on the ring has 4 lines. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Now, what Frodo's done in his words to Gollum is simply quote the first and last lines and eliminate the 2 in the middle. And I've always imagined that as simply an ellipsis, right? The intentional omission of words without altering the meaning. It's like the ... And if you want to get technical, an ellipsis is actually what that punctuation mark is called. Right. So it's not so much a misquote as it is a quote with the middle part taken out. It's 100% accurate. It's just the beginning and end of the poem. And I think that might be why we didn't discuss it at the time.
Yeah, probably so. And, obviously an ellipsis is the kind of thing you see in printed works all the time. I mean, we do it when we're preparing quotes to use on the show. We put it in our ponderings, things like that. It's in books all the time. So, yeah, I guess that seems like a pretty reasonable explanation to me, and that's probably why it didn't really register with me. I mean, I suppose somebody's going to point out, well, there is the matter of there not actually being an ellipsis in Frodo's dialogue in the printed text, but I don't think that's really significant. I think Frodo obviously knows the language of the poem. He probably thinks of it quite often, probably dreams about it.
Probably.
I think he's just leaving out the parts that aren't as relevant to the argument he wants to make with Gollum. But I agree with you. I don't know that it's quite right to call it a misquote. I think he's just using the parts that he needs. But it's a great catch, Arthur.
It is, absolutely. And I think you're right. It's the part that he needs because he's not trying to illustrate to Gollum how the 1 ring will pull together the 9, the 7, and the 3 and bring them all together.
Right.
That isn't relevant to what he's trying to explain to Gollum. What he's saying to Gollum is this ring is all powerful and it will bind. It has a power to bind, and it will hold you to your word if you swear on it. So you really need to think twice.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's a very symmetrical construction here where the first line, there's a verb in each line, right? There's one significant verb in each line, and it's rule, find, bring, and bind. Well, for purposes of this conversation, if you want to call it that he's having with Gollum, find and bring are irrelevant. He wants to emphasize to Gollum the fact that the ring will rule and the ring will bind.
Yep.
So
that's correct.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. But it is a great catch, Arthur. And I do wish we'd brought it up in the episode. It would have been a cool thing to talk about.
It would have been interesting. It's true. Well, folks, before we get back to the discussion, we want to make sure you know that when you've finished listening to this episode, the talk continues all night long at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
That's right. Our spectacular listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces, from our common room on Facebook to our Reddit community, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast, but be sure to follow the page and join the group to get involved in some great discussions.
And you can find us on Reddit at r/prancingponypod, and we're also at prancingponypod on Twitter and Instagram. But for now, let's get back into this episode, and we're going to pick up right where we left off last time. Alan, you're going to start us off.
No ellipsis? We're not trying to skip anything? Okay.
Nope, we're going straight from one sentence to the one after it, and the last sentence in our previous episode was Frodo asking Faramir if this Grey Pilgrim had a name.
Mithrandir, we called him in elf fashion, said Faramir, and he was content. Many are my names in many countries, he said. Mithrandir among the elves, Tharkûn to the dwarves. Olorin I was, in my youth, in the west that is forgotten. In the south, in Canus. In the north, Gandalf. To the east I go not. Gandalf, said Frodo. I thought it was he. Gandalf the Grey, dearest of counselors, leader of our company. He was lost in Moria. Mithrandir was lost, said Faramir. An evil fate seems to have pursued your fellowship. It is hard indeed to believe that one of so great wisdom, and of power, for many wonderful things he did among us, could perish, and so much lore be taken from the world. Are you sure of this, and that he did not just leave you and depart where he would? Alas, yes, said Frodo. I saw him fall into the abyss. I see that there is some great tale of dread in this, said Faramir, which perhaps you may tell me in the evening time. This Mithrandir was, I now guess, more than a lore master, a great mover of the deeds that are done in our time. And I'm actually stopping right there because even though Faramir keeps talking, that's a really good breaking point because I want to talk about Mithrandir's role.
As a mover of deeds, for sure.
As a mover to shaker, right, absolutely.
He's got one of those T-shirts that says, I'm kind of a big deal.
I bet he does.
He probably
actually.
does. All right. So going back to the beginning of that passage, answering Frodo's question, Faramir says, yeah, he had a name. Actually, he had a few. But, we, the men of Gondor, called him Mithrandir, which is what the elves called him.
Right.
And then he quotes the Grey Pilgrim, giving all of his various AKAs.
That's right.
Let's go through some of these. Tharkûn, Olorin, Incanus, and, of course, Gandalf.
Ah, yes, Gandalf.
So let's talk a little bit about each one of these names, because it wouldn't be the Prancing Pony Podcast if we didn't.
No, it wouldn't be. You're right.
Nope. The first one, Mithrandir, means, as we've talked about before, Grey Pilgrim.
Yeah, we've touched on that enough times that we don't need to remind you of that, other than to just simply remind you that it's Grey Pilgrim.
And that it's just a translation. Grey Pilgrim is just a translation of Mithrandir.
Mithrandir, right.
Yeah.
Well, then we get his name amongst the dwarves, and that one's Tharkûn, and I believe this is the first time we see that. It's mentioned in a long note included in the chapter on the Astari in Unfinished Tales that Christopher Tolkien says was meant to elucidate this very passage. And in that note, it says that Tharkûn is, quote, said to mean staff man, which actually correlates very well with Gandalf, which means the elf of the wand.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that leaves us with Olorin and Incanus.
Yeah.
Now, I'll start with Olorin, and I'm sure we've talked about this one before.
Well, back in season 1, right.
Some time ago, yeah. So in that same chapter on the Astari in Unfinished Tales, we read that Olorin is a high elven name, and must therefore have been given to him in Valinor by the Eldar, or be a translation meant to be significant to them. In either case, what was the significance of the name, given or assumed? Olor is a word often translated dream, but that does not refer to most human dreams, certainly not the dreams of sleep.
Right.
To the Eldar, it included the vivid contents of their memory, as of their imagination. It referred, in fact, to clear vision in the mind of things not physically present at the body's situation, but not only to an idea, but to a full clothing of this in particular form and detail. This clearly connects to what we read about Olorin in the Valaquenta way back in season 1.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Where the text tells us that Olorin dwelt in Lorien in Valinor, and of course those two words are connected, right? Olorin and the name Lorien for the Gardens of Olorin.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which makes sense given that, the connection with dreams.
Right, absolutely. And the idea that Irmo or Lorien sends these kinds of dreams, right? Not just the dreams of sleep, but these dreams
Clear
that are visions, right?
Yeah.
Right.
As we know from a couple of First Age elves who received such clear visions,
right,
like Turgon and Finrod, who went on to found Gondolin and Nargothrond, respectively.
That's right. So going back to that line from the Valaquenta, Olorin dwelt in Lorien and Valinor, and that though he loved the elves, he walked among them unseen, or in form as one of them, and they did not know whence came the fair visions or the promptings of wisdom that he put into their hearts.
He's walking along, you get a dream, and you get a dream, and you get a dream. Everybody gets a dream.
That's right. That's right.
Well, now that we've touched on all of the other names, that leaves us with Incarnus. Well, first, going back to Unfinished Tales in that essay on the Istari, we read that the name Incarnus is apparently alien, that is, neither Westron nor Elvish, Sindarin or Quenya, nor explicable by the surviving tongues of northern men. A note in the Thane's book says that it is a form adapted to Quenya of a word in the tongue of the Haradrim, meaning simply north spy, Inca plus nous. But this note dates from before the second edition of The Lord of the Rings in 1966, and we also have a later note written in 1967 that Christopher references, right?
That's right. There, Christopher says, my father concluded here that in the south did refer to Gondor, and that Incarnus was, like Olorin, a Quenya name, but one devised in Gondor in earlier times, while Quenya was still much used by the learned, and was the language of many historical records, as it had been in Numenor.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher then proposes an etymology of the name, as coming from the Quenya elements in, or inid, mind, and Khan, ruler, especially in Kano, Kanu, ruler, governor, chieftain, which latter, this is still Christopher talking here, which latter constitutes the second element in the names Turgon and Fingon, so it would have been related to those names.
Ah.
In this note, my father referred to the Latin word Incarnus, gray-haired, in such a way as to suggest that this was the actual origin of this name of Gandalf's when The Lord of the Rings was written, which if true would be very surprising. And at the end of the discussion, he remarked that the coincidence in form of the Quenya name and the Latin word must be regarded as an accident, in the same way that Sindarin Orthunk, forked height, happens to coincide with the Anglo-Saxon word Orthunk, cunning device, which is the translation of the actual name in the language of the Rohirrim.
Huh.
That absolutely fascinating. So I remember the Orthunk thing. We talked about that before, that it actually means something in Anglo-Saxon as well as Sindarin.
Yeah.
Here it looks like we might have another one of those where...
That's interesting. But Latin.
Yeah, it means something in an invented language, Quenya in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also means something in a real world language, which is Latin.
Yeah.
And that's really fascinating to me because, first of all, shame on me, I don't remember my college Latin well enough to remember that Incarnus meant gray-haired.
Would you have learned every possible word? I mean, I don't know. That's.
Thank you for making me feel better about myself.
I'm trying to help every little bit I can. Yeah.
I feel like I should have known that one for some reason because I did take it for like 3 years. But now, every time I saw Incarnus, I always thought of it as like a play on incantation or enchanter.
Oh.
It's like one of those kind of words.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if Tolkien wanted us to think of Incarnus as sort of an enchanter name or a play on the idea of an enchanter, he could have made it really simple and just given him a name like, I don't know, Tim?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Greetings, Tim the Enchanter. Yeah, that works.
Greetings, King Arthur.
You know my name. Oh, all right.
I know. Okay. I know. Fine. I guess we've seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail a few times.
A few times. And hey, look, Gandalf can summon up fire without flint or tinder. So
that he can.
There's that.
He can. Multicolored fire at that.
That's right.
I don't think he's afraid of any rabbits with big, sharp, nasty, pointy teeth.
I don't know.
But maybe not. Maybe.
Against some things, he has not been tested.
That's great. I like that. Against,
I'm imagining a great big flaming rabbit.
I know. Seriously. The Witch King takes off his helmet, and underneath is this like
some rabbit
demonic Easter bunny thing.
Yep.
With the red eyes, angry ears, just standing up. Yeah. All right. Well, back to the text because eventually we have to get back there, and thank God that we eventually do. Frodo's suspicion is confirmed here. It's Gandalf. It's Gandalf the Grey. And that's when Frodo delivers the bad news to Faramir that Gandalf was lost in Moria.
Man, Frodo. all the bad news here. And Faramir has a hard time believing this, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
First of all, he makes this observation about an evil fate. But he says like Mithrandir was wise and powerful. It's kind of hard to believe that he could die. Like how'd that guy fall?
How did that guy die? And if that guy died and Boromir died, how in the world are you still alive, little Frodo guy?
There is that. Yeah, that's kind of the unspoken meaning of that evil fate bit, isn't it? It's like,
I think so. But then he asks Frodo, are you sure? Are you really sure? I mean, I know Boromir's dead because I saw his body, but are you sure that Mithrandir actually died? And I have to say, I think this question echoes Frodo's asking Faramir if he was sure about Boromir, right? In other words, Frodo says, oh, maybe it was just a vision that you saw. It couldn't have been Boromir in truth, right?
That's a very good point, yeah.
And I think Faramir's asking the same thing, right?
Yeah. To me, I just noticed that it's spoken like someone who actually knew Gandalf in life, like leave you and depart where he would is totally something Gandalf would do.
Oh, that's a Gandalf thing. Yeah, you're right.
Totally.
It absolutely is.
So when Faramir says that, he's like, yeah, that tracks. That's pretty on brand for
totally,
Gandalf.
That's on brand. That's
Faramir
right.
definitely knew him.
Wow, that's a good catch. I don't think I noticed that before, but you're right. That's very much who Gandalf is, as we know.
It's the Gandalf thing. And as we'll see, that's the kind of relationship that Faramir had with him.
That's true.
Disappear at times.
Came and taught him a little bit and then off into the wilderness again. Yeah.
But Frodo confirms, like, hey, just like you in the boat, like I actually saw Gandalf fall into the deep abyss in Moria.
Yeah.
Faramir wants to know more, but, suggests, maybe we'll just talk about this a little bit later.
It sounds like a dinner table conversation, Mithrandir falling and dying. Let's talk about that while we eat. Yeah.
Yeah. Not exactly walking conversation.
I don't really understand, but okay. He then observes something regarding Mithrandir that I really want us to linger on a little bit. He says he's more than just a lore master. He's responsible for the deeds done in our time. I want to go back to that chapter on the Astari in Unfinished Tales, and we read something that sounds very much like what Faramir describes here. Coming in shapes weak and humble, the Astari were bidden to advise and persuade men and elves to good, and to seek to unite in love and understanding all those whom Sauron, should he come again, would endeavor to dominate and corrupt. Responsible for the deeds done in our time? I think so.
Absolutely.
That's his purpose.
Very much.
And then to get that exact point across, we also read later, elsewhere it is told how it was that when Sauron rose again, Gandalf also arose and partly revealed his power, and becoming the chief mover of the resistance to Sauron, was at last victorious, and brought all by vigilance and labor to that end which the Valar under the one that is above them had designed. The chief mover of the resistance. That's right. The deeds done in our time for sure.
Definitely. It's kind of a promotion from the Gandalf that we see at the very beginning of The Hobbit, where, when we first see him, it just seems like, oh, he's just a wandering wizard. This kind of guy just like shows up, I've got this adventure, do this little thing.
Does fireworks, toys,
right.
Yeah, birthday
he
parties.
Just could be like a wandering magician, kind of a vagabond kind of guy.
Yeah,
you don't really
very
know.
much so. Yeah.
But, and of course we've talked about this in season 1. This is not a surprise for anybody listening to the show, but
no,
you really see how over the course of the story, the more you learn about Gandalf, he is this person of great nobility, not just a human, not a human person.
He's more than human, right?
More than a human.
He's in human form, right? But
right.
I think it's interesting, though, that Faramir, having only met him a handful of times, as we'll see, was able to perceive this, right? We've talked about how perceptive Faramir is.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who's really only interacted with a few times.
Just a few times in his life. Probably when he was a bit younger. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very much so. And yet he realizes, or guesses at the very least, that Gandalf was much more than just a guy who knew a lot of ancient lore.
Yeah.
He is responsible. He is a mover of these deeds. Just another revelation.
Yeah, we definitely see again and again that Faramir is the kind of person who's able to discern deep truths by just a little bit of information. Very, very strong powers of deduction.
Better than what we've got, where we have to kind of get hit over the head with something a few hundred times before we figure it out.
Yeah. And then, issue a correction 4 episodes later.
At least, yeah. Well, let's go and move on to the next section. I'm going to have you pick up later in that paragraph with the secret library card that he gets.
Right. He got leave of Denethor, how I do not know, to look at the secrets of our treasury, and I learned a little of him when he would teach, and that was seldom. Ever he would search and would question us above all else concerning the great battle that was fought upon Dagorlad in the beginning of Gondor, when he whom we do not name was overthrown. And he was eager for stories of Isildur, though of him we had less to tell, for nothing certain was ever known among us of his end. Now Faramir's voice sang to a whisper. But this much I learned, or guessed, and I have kept it ever secret in my heart since, that Isildur took somewhat from the hand of the unnamed, ere he went away from Gondor, never to be seen among mortal men again. Here, I thought, was the answer to Mithrandir's questioning.
Once again, incredibly perceptive, but we'll get to that.
Eerily accurate, sir.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Have you been reading spoilers? Because really, it
Right.
sounds like you know everything. All right.
Yeah.
So going back actually to the portion that you didn't read, he does think that if Gandalf had been around, he might have clarified that dream that led Boromir to go all the way up to Rivendell.
Yeah, he might have, although, Faramir also recognizes that maybe Boromir was doomed to go, right? Fated in this case.
Yeah.
That he was doomed to go on this journey. And honestly, we know that Boromir was doomed to go on that journey,
Right.
don't we? We talked about this all the way back at the Council of Elrond. Elrond talked about how everyone had been called there, called but not by me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, we know that it was fated for Boromir to go. And again,
Look at the role that he played.
right. Absolutely. A very important
We
role.
talked about this. If he didn't do what he did, even the wrong thing of trying to take the ring, Frodo would have still been there when the orcs attacked and might very well have been captured. He forced Frodo's hand.
Yeah.
And Frodo left. Yeah.
That is textbook Spabimi.
Absolutely.
A horrible mistake, a horribly evil deed by Boromir.
Yep.
That turns to good.
Absolutely.
And Faramir, while he obviously doesn't know all of that, he has the wisdom to recognize that, maybe it was meant for Boromir to go.
Yeah.
Maybe everything was meant to kind of play out the way it has to get us to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And, he says, after all, like, it's not like Mithrandir ever told us what was coming or told us about his real role or his purposes.
He was very secretive. That's also very on the nose for Gandalf.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very close, as the hobbits would say.
Close indeed. Yeah. Well, then he mentions the secret library card that I mentioned, the one that Gandalf wheedled out of Denethor. We don't know how.
Those are hard to get.
Those are very hard to get.
You have to provide like 4 different proofs of residence, and you have to get like references.
And then you've got to renew it every quarter.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It really is. So somehow, though, Gandalf does manage to get one of these. And that's also when Faramir mentions that he learned from Gandalf. Rarely, right? That was seldom, the text says, but he did learn. Yeah.
Yeah. But instead of teaching, most of the time Gandalf was searching.
Right.
Searching especially for information about the Battle of the Dagorlad and stories about Isildur.
Mm-hmm.
And Faramir points out, like, when it came to Isildur, there really wasn't a whole lot to say. We didn't know anything about how he died. He left Gondor. We never really knew what happened to him.
That's right. But that's when Faramir whispers, and keep in mind, folks, that Damrod and Mablung are with him just a few steps ahead. So this is so secretive for Faramir that he doesn't even want them to hear. And he tells Frodo something that he's learned, or frankly guessed, and kept secret for years.
Mm-hmm. And that is that he thinks, and again, this is creepily accurate.
Yeah, seriously.
He thinks that Isildur took something from the hand of Sauron before he left Gondor.
A keychain, garage remote. I don't know. Broken sunglasses.
Something. $20. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this is incredibly insightful.
It is.
More so that he thinks that this is what Gandalf was looking for in all these old records.
That's amazing to string all those things together. Faramir basically has connected all these dots, but then he's doing that again here, right? He's connecting these dots and recognizing the knowledge he gleaned back then, the stuff that he's guessed about what happened with Isildur and Sauron. At the time, he thought that was just ancient history, as we would call it.
Right.
He recognizes that even when we were debating the meaning of the dream, he'd never connected this with the idea of Isildur's bane.
Well, yeah, and after all, I mean, they just believed that Isildur was ambushed and shot by orcs. There's no reason to connect these two things here.
Not at all.
Again, think back to our recent Philology Fair segment on bane, where we talked about the multiple meanings of that. It can be a person, it can be a thing. So, yeah, that's all he was thinking about that.
I think so. I do want to also clarify something. We mentioned earlier that he said that, there wasn't much to say. We don't know what happened to Isildur after he left. And then we're just saying, well, we thought he was ambushed and shot by orcs. If you look at the text, it makes it clear that the only legend that we knew was that Isildur was ambushed and slain by orc arrows. Right. He doesn't necessarily know that that's what happened, and we don't really have any official stories. Nothing certain was ever known. So the two are not contradictory. He's not contradicting himself here.
But all they had was hearsay. They didn't have any.
They had the one legend.
Proper account. Yep.
And because it was just a legend, there's nothing certain. So he can both say nothing certain was ever known.
Right.
And Isildur was ambushed and slain according to this legend. So,
that's a fair clarification.
Okay.
All right. Well, now we're going to go ahead and get back into the text with Faramir's 2 new designer colognes, Promise and Desire.
That's great. 2 new colognes. Faramir's Promise and Faramir's Desire.
There you go.
Brought to you by Coco Chanel, who is not a sponsor of the Prancing Pony podcast, I must acknowledge. If they want to send me a whole lot of money, they're welcome to. All right.
They're welcome to.
Here we go. What in truth this thing is, I cannot yet guess, but some heirloom of power and peril it must be. A fell weapon, perchance, devised by the Dark Lord. If it were a thing that gave advantage in battle, I can well believe that Boromir, the proud and fearless, often rash, ever anxious for the victory of Minas Tirith, and his own glory therein, might desire such a thing, and be allured by it. Alas, that ever he went on that errand. I should have been chosen by my father and the elders, but he put himself forward as being the older and the hardier, both true, and he would not be stayed. But fear no more. I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin, and I alone could save her so, using the weapon of the Dark Lord, for her good and my glory. No, I do not wish for such triumphs, Frodo, son of Drogo. Neither did the council, said Frodo. Nor do I. I would have nothing to do with such matters. For myself, said Faramir, I would see the white tree in flower again in the courts of the kings, and the silver crown return, and Minas Tirith in peace. Minas Anor again, as of old, full of light, high and fair, beautiful as a queen among other queens, not a mistress of many slaves, nay, not even a kind mistress of willing slaves. War must be, while we defend our lives against a destroyer who would devour all. But I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend, the city of the men of Númenor, and I would have her loved for her memory, her ancientry, her beauty, and her present wisdom.
All right.
Thank you for letting me take that passage.
Oh, man, I got to let you have all the really good Faramir stuff. I know
some of my absolute favorite lines in the entire Legendarium right in there.
Totally fine with that. There might be a couple I'll fight you for at some point, but no.
Fair enough.
All good. So, yeah, in the previous passage, we had Faramir, wondering, what is this Isildur's Bane thing? What is this?
Right.
What is this object that he thinks Isildur took?
Uh-huh.
Now, here we have him starting with, he still can't guess what this thing is. And I love the fact that he uses a capital T here.
Oh, I do too. Yeah,
that's really
significant.
It's like the narrator is telling us that Faramir puts special emphasis on the word thing.
Yes.
Right? What in truth this thing is. But, while he can't guess what it is, he guesses that it must be an heirloom of power and peril.
It must be. That's not a guess. It's a conclusion. He might not be able to identify the thing.
It really is. It's true. It's a conclusion based on quite a bit of smart deduction and the evidence available.
It's a logical deduction. It must be this heirloom of power and peril, whatever it may be. So he's able to identify the category that it is, just not the actual item that it is. And it's just, again, reflects how observant, how perceptive, but also how wise he is, because he doesn't try to take this conclusion too far to identify what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
He knows when to stop conjecturing.
That's right. Now, Boromir certainly recognized the ring as an heirloom of power as well. I mean, that was very clear at the Council of Elrond. It's not certain, though, that he was convinced of its peril. And I think that's another indication of Faramir's wisdom here. Boromir saw it as a powerful thing, a tool, really, to be used against Sauron. Faramir sees that it's an heirloom of power and peril. And I think Faramir senses that is inherent to what it is and maybe even to whose it was without having to know what it actually is.
That's an interesting point. I think you're right about that, although it could be that Boromir is just the kind of guy who thinks that, yeah, it's perilous. It's a weapon, right? Any weapon is perilous.
That's true. Yeah.
It's perilous, but I can handle it. Maybe it's just Boromir.
Can't we have a little peril?
Man, that was right over the plate for you. Wow. But maybe Boromir is just the kind of guy who just thinks like, yeah, of course it's dangerous, but I can handle it. Which is to say that he doesn't really get the peril either.
No, he doesn't get the scope of the peril. He seems to think peril is just something that goes with the job and that he's able to handle it. Yeah.
And that he can handle it. On some level, he understands, okay, yeah, this is a perilous thing. Like somebody tells him that, okay, I'll believe it. But he doesn't really internalize that. He doesn't really feel it in his gut the way Faramir does.
No, until it's too late, really.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talked about it being a weapon. I mean, Faramir notes that maybe it is a weapon. It could be a weapon that was created by Sauron.
Because that would explain a lot of things, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, if it would help in battle, that would certainly explain why Boromir was so attracted to the thing.
And allured by it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tempted by it is what that means there. I also have to note, though, the loving shade that he throws Boromir's way, right?
Oh, yeah.
And his own glory therein.
Yeah. Not just the victory of Minas Tirith, but his own glory therein. That's some real talk from little brother there.
It is. And
he knows.
He's saying this just matter-of-factly. He's not slamming Boromir. He's just observing that's just who Boromir was.
It's just who he was. And I know that he didn't always do things like this for the right reasons.
No.
It's not a criticism so much as it is
just an observation.
Again, acceptance of who he was and regret that Boromir ever went on this errand.
Yeah.
Alas that he ever went. Alas that ever he went. Sorry, Professor, I like my words better. But, knowing his weakness as he did, he thinks that he should have been chosen. This is Faramir. Faramir thinks he should have been chosen by Denethor and the elders.
By the way, just as a quick aside, this is the only mention of elders as it relates to the governance of Minas Tirith. I did some searching on it. I couldn't find it anyplace else.
Oh, interesting.
But I thought that was interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like some kind of a senate or a council or something, yeah.
I doubt it's an actual senate in the sense of, like parliamentary and legislative and all of that, but a board of advisors or counselors or something like that. I want to imagine. Yeah. Like any king would have his court. In this case, the steward would have some men, some elders that he would consult. But yeah,
I only say senate just because it reminds me of ancient Rome. I'm wondering if there might have been, some sort of
a little SPQR here. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But no, you're probably right. It's probably something smaller than that. It's probably more like a council or something like that.
Yeah.
But
we don't know. That's the funny thing. We literally don't know. This is the only mention of it. And it's like, man, come on. Now I want to know how this works.
I know. Yeah. Thanks for the textual ruin, Professor.
I know. A civics textual ruin.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What was the exact form of government in Gondor? Yeah. We know it was a stewardship, but what else? What else did they have?
Right. Were these elders chosen? And if so, were they chosen by direct vote or were they chosen by some sort of representative vote? Did they only come from a certain class?
Or strange women lying in ponds distributing swords?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's always the best way for a system of government.
Well, no basis for a system of government if you ask me. But
well, maybe only if you're an anarcho-syndicalist commune.
Well, for anybody else, it's perfectly fine.
Right, exactly. All right, back to the text. Sorry.
Back to the text. So, Faramir regrets that Boromir did this, but he volunteered, and because he volunteered and because he's the older one and he's the hardier one, Boromir was actually both of those things, unlike you. He actually got to
go. Wow, did you just say unlike me?
Wow, I just brought it back to the beginning. That's all.
I know you did. That was
full circle.
Well done.
Full circle. Thank you.
Full circle indeed. We should probably talk about hardy just a little bit, right? What does it mean to be hardy? It doesn't just mean like strong. Specifically, it's about the ability to endure difficult conditions.
It's more constitution than strength, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's much more constitution, survivability, capability of enduring. I think they saw that Boromir was maybe more prepared, if that's the right word, to take that long journey that it would take, that months-long journey by himself all the way to Imladris, where, he didn't have Google Maps. He didn't know exactly where it was. And Faramir, on the other hand, they just decided
maybe he wasn't quite as ready for that journey all on his own.
Yeah, maybe he didn't do all that well in like survival school. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Strange because he's the ranger, but okay.
I know.
Whatever you say, elders. Sure thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, then it's time for the promise, right? And it's one of my favorite lines in all of the Legendarium, first, second, third age. Yeah. And it is the reason why I was so frustrated by film Faramir. Again, not the acting or anything, because I thought David Wenham did a fantastic job. But the fact that they didn't have him say this line, and in fact, he ended up doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. And this is when we go back to what we talked about last week regarding Faramir's character, but especially as it contrasts with the characters of his father Denethor, as we'll see next season, and his brother Boromir, as we saw last season.
It's important to note that his character is such that he says this, and this isn't just words.
No.
He means this when he says this, and having said it, first of all, having said it, he will adhere to it.
Well, that's true. Yeah, once he said it,
he
sticks to it no matter what.
Yeah. But also, this is just a clear statement even now, even with not complete information. Mm-hmm. This is a clear statement by him that the end never justifies the means.
That's right. Absolutely right.
Look at the way he phrases it. He says, even if Minas Tirith were falling in ruin, I'm the only person who could save her, and I could only do it using this weapon. No, I wouldn't do it. It wouldn't be worth it.
Absolutely.
It's not right.
The end does not justify the means.
Yep.
And like you said earlier, he really does mean this. We're going to see that near the end of this chapter after Faramir finds out a little bit more. He acknowledges that even though I knew not clearly what this thing was when I spoke, still I should take those words as a vow and be held by them.
That's the line I was thinking of. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great line. Faramir simply says what he means what he says, even when he doesn't know what he really means.
Yeah, he's not going to come back later on and say like, oh, well, I didn't really know what I was saying.
There are a few addendums, quid pro quos.
Had I known it was the ring, I probably would have said something.
That's another story.
Right.
Yeah,
well, that changes everything. No, that's not Faramir. That's not who he is.
Yeah. The ends don't justify the means. Absolutely.
And on that topic of the ends don't justify the means, Frodo says the council held to the same opinion, and so did he.
Yeah, because Boromir had argued we should use this to defeat Sauron, and the rest of the council was like, no.
It is a gift.
The ends don't justify the means.
The movie, not the book, but yeah, Frodo says the council didn't think that was the right thing to do either, and neither do I. I would want nothing to do at all with this sort of thing.
Oh,
such
yeah,
matters.
He doesn't want anything to do with this. No, he'd rather go home, back to the Shire, but he knows that's not his fate, right?
Yeah, and then Faramir. I love this bit.
Oh, yeah.
Faramir then gives a little soliloquy, a passionate speech about
he does.
What he actually does want. Yeah. And I think this is worth looking at in some detail.
Oh, I think so too.
He starts by saying he wants to see the white tree in flower again and the silver crown return. He's a monarchist.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely.
Contrast this with his brother, who we found out, come on. The king's been gone for 1,000 years. Why can't I be a king,
Right.
Faramir wants someone of the line of Elendil to return to the throne of Gondor, even though it's been nearly 1,000 years since there's been a king, which, for all he knows, is completely impossible at this point.
Yeah, it's got to seem totally unlikely. Yeah.
Your analogy, it's like, oh man, I really wish that there was an heir of Edward the Confessor out there. Like,
right.
Nobody's thinking that.
Nobody's thinking that.
But that is what Faramir desires.
Yeah, and he wants the city to be at peace again, to not even be called Minas Tirith. He wants it to go back to being Minas Anor, the Tower of the Sun, instead of Minas Tirith, which is the Tower of Gar.
The light that's implied by that. I love that.
That's right. That's very much a moment of light, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's been called Minas Tirith for more than 1,000 years, since before the stewards led Minas Tirith or led Gondor. It's been called this since the Witch King captured Minas Ithil, Tower of the Moon, and that became known as Minas Morgul, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been this way for a long time, but look at what he wants. He wants, well, the good old days, but the good old days of more than 1,000 years ago.
Right. Not just the good old days of the last kings, but the good old days of, like the golden age. That's what he wants.
Yeah, at peace. And he doesn't want the rule of other countries or peoples either. And I think this is super important. We're going to get into a little bit more of Tolkien himself on this. This is, I think, another example where Tolkien's sort of sneaking himself in here, intentionally or otherwise. And I don't think it's intentional. this idea that he wants his city to be a queen among other queens.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want a kind mistress of willing slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't even want his city to be the capital of an empire. He does not want conquest.
No, he just wants it to be a beautiful city among other beautiful cities.
Right.
Maybe a first among equals.
Yeah.
Without, I mean, I know that there are modern political implications to that phrase, but
well, that's true.
Not mean any of those. I just mean hey, there are lots of beautiful places in the world. Minas Tirith might be the best in his eyes, but it's just one of many.
But it's a peer to others. It's not ahead of others in the sense that they own it or have expanded and
exactly.
Gone into this empire mode. Right.
Everybody does not want to rule the world.
Faramir at least doesn't.
Faramir certainly does not want to rule the world. And he acknowledges that, look, I know war is sometimes a necessity, but I love this. This is one of my favorite Faramir bits in the entire book.
Oh.
It is not a thing to be loved for its own sake.
Yeah.
The reason for war is love of what war defends and protects.
That's correct. We don't love war. We love what it defends and protects.
We don't fight for the sake of fighting. We fight to defend and protect something that we love that's worth loving.
Right.
And, we mentioned earlier that during the time that Tolkien was writing these chapters, he was also writing quite a few. There's a long series of letters to his son, Christopher. And that's when Christopher was training for the Royal Air Force in South Africa.
Right.
So it's not a surprise to read those letters and see many mentions of war, and many of them expressing thoughts that are very similar to what Faramir has to say here about war.
Very similar. Tolkien often makes comments lamenting war. There's a brilliant line in letter number 61. He comments about how stupid everything is, and war multiplies the stupidity by 3 and its power by itself. So one's precious days are ruled by 3x squared when x equals normal human crassitude, and that's bad enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that line.
That's awesome.
Who said the professor can't math, right?
I know, right? Of course. He was quite good at math, as we know now from the first part of Nature of Middle-earth.
Oh, yeah, that's quite true.
But then there's also letter number 64, where he points out the utter stupid waste of war, not only material, but moral and spiritual, is so staggering to those who have to endure it. But then after saying that, he then goes on to acknowledge, much like Faramir does, that it will be necessary to face it in an evil world.
Yeah, that's right. It's a fallen world and war is going to happen, and we can't bury our heads in the sand. There's a letter where he's talking about Tom Bombadil being a pacifist and how that position is worth representing, but it's also not a very practical position because it couldn't exist without everybody else,
right?
Because there's no place for him in a world ruled by Sauron.
Right.
That's very much the gist that you get from Tolkien's letters. But I especially want to point out one more in letter number 53. Tolkien says, very much like Faramir talking about loving Minas Tirith, he says, I love England, not Great Britain, and certainly not the British Commonwealth. Grr! Exclamation mark.
He actually does put grr in there, the exclamation point. That's right. I remember.
Brilliant.
That. Yeah.
And then he adds, and if I was of military age, I should, I fancy, be grousing away in a fighting service and willing to go on to the bitter end, always hoping that things may turn out better for England than they look like doing. So I can't help but see Tolkien in Faramir here. That whole idea about a queen among other queens and not a mistress of willing slaves.
Yeah, I mean, that's his criticism of the British Commonwealth.
Yeah, his anti-empire stance.
Yeah.
You know, England's great. I love England and I'll fight for my country.
Yeah.
But I don't want to fight for this concept of empire.
Right.
And it's brilliant and it's personal and it's poignant, and we see it reflected so deeply in Faramir here.
Very much
and
so.
Speaking of Faramir, I want to go back to the reasons, right? You know, we talked about how we don't love war for war's sake. We love war for what it defends and protects.
Mm-hmm.
What are those things that he loves or that he wants his city loved for? Not for her power and not for her riches and not for her glory. He wants Minas Tirith loved for her memory, her ancientry, which is a beautiful word.
That is a cool word. Yeah.
Her beauty, and then her present wisdom. Present wisdom.
Her present wisdom, not just her ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
But her present wisdom.
Which also says something, I think. Yeah.
It's a really, really beautiful reflection by Faramir, and it's a very pure and wholesome kind of patriotism.
That's a very good way of putting it. You're right. A wholesome kind of patriotism. I love that.
Yeah, and I have to think, obviously, as Tolkien's writing this, the world was in the grips of World War II.
Yeah, World War II was very much, underway at this point.
Yeah, very much underway. And we saw the dark side of patriotism, right? We saw, I didn't want to call it patriotism, but, just sort of kind of the nationalist movement.
Yes.
That really came to its extreme conclusion in Nazi Germany. And here we're seeing the opposite of that. We're seeing a very pure, again, it's just a wholesome patriotism. It's the kind of thing that I can really, really get behind.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I do too.
I think it's a wonderful contrast to what Tolkien was feeling about the world around him. And and I'm not saying that all the bad nationalists are on the German side either. I mean, there's always...
Well, no, of course not.
There's always people who love their country for the wrong reasons anywhere.
Orcs on both sides, as Tolkien would say in several of his letters as well. Yeah,
exactly. But I think that that's such an obvious example of the dark side of nationalism, that to see Faramir engaging in something so pure and so humble in a way, it's quite lovely.
And the kind of the contrast with the Empire idea, I think a lot of Numenor is on our minds these days as we ramp up for the television show.
For the Rings of Power.
And so we can't help but think about Numenor's aggressive expansion under the less than good kings.
Yeah.
That, deforested parts of Middle Earth and, subjugated peoples.
The people. And
and then eventually after they bring Sauron back, well, they didn't just subjugate it, they started sacrificing them,
right.
I mean, really, really bad stuff. And it's all this slippery slope of empire. And I think that's the thing we see with Faramir here. He does not want a massive kingdom. He wants Minas Tirith.
He has truly learned the lessons not only of the Third Age, but of the Second Age too.
Yeah.
He has studied his history, and we know he talks about Numenor elsewhere. He's one of our best sources of information about Numenor in this book.
That's correct.
And he knows, he has learned the lessons of Numenor. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Boy, he sure has. Well, I love that discussion and I love that passage, but we're going to pick up exactly where I left off. This is now a chance for you to pick up yet more great lines from Faramir.
All right. So fear me not. I do not ask you to tell me more. I do not even ask you to tell me whether I now speak nearer the mark. But if you will trust me, it may be that I can advise you in your present quest, whatever that be. Yes, and even aid you. Frodo made no answer. Almost he yielded to the desire for help and counsel, to tell this grave young man, whose words seemed so wise and fair, all that was in his mind. But something held him back. His heart was heavy with fear and sorrow. If he and Sam were indeed, as seemed likely, all that was now left of the 9 walkers, then he was in sole command of the secret of their errand. Better mistrust undeserved than rash words, and the memory of Boromir, of the dreadful change that the lure of the ring had worked in him, was very present to his mind when he looked at Faramir and listened to his voice. Unlike they were, and yet also much akin.
Yeah, Frodo's got to be careful here.
Absolutely.
So at the end of this rich monologue, the one that I covered in the last passage, we get a little bit more here. Faramir asks Frodo not to fear him anymore. And in fact, he tells Frodo, not only am I not going to ask you for more information, I've already pressed you hard enough, I'm not even going to ask you to tell me if my guesses have been accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Do I strike near the mark? I don't want to know that now.
Yeah, not looking for anything from you, but I am offering to give you some advice.
That's right.
Not just advice, but even aid, tangible aid.
Yeah.
I will actually help you, not just tell you what you should do. And this leads to a moment that I really do love. It's this moment of insight into Frodo's heart and mind, his reaction to this treatment by Faramir. I mean, he wants to tell Faramir everything. I mean, he almost decides to tell Faramir everything.
Yeah.
He almost yielded to that desire.
Yeah, I mean, because he hears his words as wise and fair.
He's needs it. He's got to feel like he just needs a friend. He needs a counselor.
Yeah.
He needs help.
He really does. He wants that help and counsel, and he hears Faramir's words as being wise and fair. But then he hesitates, and he realizes, man, if me and Sam are all that's left, I really have to be very careful and hold back.
Yeah, that's got to be so painful.
Oh, because he wants so desperately to just unload and get the help that he knows he needs.
Yeah.
But he has to think of the quest as a whole.
He can't risk it. He just feels like he cannot risk it. And we get this little proverb, better mistrust undeserved than rash words.
That's a great little proverb, isn't it?
It is. And basically what it's saying is like, it's better that I don't give this guy the trust that he probably deserves than, to say something I'm going to regret. It may be unfair to him, And it's probably unfair to me because I could really use the help.
Definitely unfair to me. I could use the help, but yeah.
But I just cannot take the risk.
Exactly. It's a risk management thing. I mean, the likelihood that you can't trust Faramir is very, very slim, but the cost, if you're wrong.
Yeah, is very, very high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Absolutely.
Total failure, actually, if it turns out you can't.
Absolutely. And he has good reason to think that the likelihood might actually be higher than he thinks because he's reminded of Boromir here. He can't help but think of Boromir.
No, impossible not to. I mean, right.
Faramir does look quite a bit like him. He sounds quite a bit like him, even though he is truly very unlike him, as we can hear from the things he says.
Yeah, yeah.
But he does look and sound like Boromir, and Frodo just can't shake that memory of how the power of the ring changed Boromir. And he doesn't want to see that happen to Faramir. How painful would that be to see that happen to Faramir?
To trust Faramir, and then Faramir's exposed to the ring and is tempted and fails the way that Boromir did. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And that's why film Faramir bothers me so much.
Oh, with good reason. With absolutely good reason.
Too much like Boromir. Yeah.
Again, David Wenham did a fantastic job with the role. I really do like him. I liked his delivery of his lines. I thought he was
same here.
He was great. They just changed him too much.
Yeah.
It was not our Faramir.
No, it was not. For a moment, I thought, our Faramir, like our Farazan. You mean our Faramir?
Right.
I was thinking, one of the early kings of Numenor, our
It's just
Faramir.
My Texas coming out, that's all.
Our Faramir.
That's just my Texas accent coming out as it sometimes
I'm just giving you a hard time.
But let's keep this thing moving. And you're going to pick up about a paragraph later on.
Okay, as they're heading back, right.
And we're getting back to Sam here.
That's right. So we just had Frodo a little bit, right? We dove deep into Frodo's perspective, and now we're going to get Sam's perspective. Sam had taken no part in the conversation, though he had listened. And at the same time, he had attended with his keen hobbit ears to all the soft woodland noises about them. One thing he had noted, that in all the talk, the name of Gollum had not once come up. He was glad, though he felt that it was too much to hope that he would never hear it again. He soon became aware also that though they walked alone, there were many men close at hand. Not only Damrod and Mablung flitting in and out of the shadows ahead, but others on either side, all making their swift, secret way to some appointed place. Once, looking suddenly back as if some prickle of the skin told him that he was watched from behind, he thought he caught a brief glimpse of a small dark shape slipping behind a tree trunk. He opened his mouth to speak and shut it again. And that's where we'll stop for now.
All right. In the very short paragraph that you skipped, we see the company continue on their way in silence, walking through these evergreen woods. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those in a bit here. But then we switch to Sam's perspective. We've just spent some time in Frodo's mind, and now we get a little bit of Sam's inner monologue. And this is a very interesting little shift I think we're going to want to talk about.
I agree. We get the fact that Sam had listened to the conversation, but he wasn't paying it 100% of his attention because he was also listening very carefully to the sounds in the woods. And then we get this observation that thankfully Gollum hadn't come up in the conversation yet, but he was less than optimistic that it would stay that way, rightly so. Can you imagine? Oh, well, I guess I'm never going to hear about Gollum again. No, pretty unlikely. Yeah.
Come on. He'd also noticed that although it was just the 5 of them, other men could be seen, right? Lots of them close at hand.
Yeah. They're all making their way to the same place. So of course they're going to be visible here and there, but these are going to be stealthy rangers of Ithilien. So most folks probably wouldn't have noticed them.
Right.
But then he has that feeling of being watched, not seen like he would by the rangers of Ithilien, but watched. And he turns around and he thinks he sees, well, let's be honest, he thinks he sees Gollum.
I think that's it. A small dark shape slipping behind a tree trunk.
The old villain.
Who else would it be?
Yeah.
And he decides not to say anything. Now, all right, he doesn't say anything because he's not sure.
Right.
And he's like, all right, don't want to set off a false alarm. And besides, why should I remind Frodo and Faramir if they want to forget about Gollum?
I mean, after all, I wish I could.
Yeah. And of course, that's perfectly on brand for Sam to say that.
It's very on brand.
I think this is a mistake, though.
Yep, I agree.
He would like to forget about Gollum.
Right.
And so he's being a little selfish here, not bringing up the fact that Gollum might be nearby just because he wants to.
If I don't mention Gollum, we don't have to talk about Gollum.
Right.
We don't talk about Gollum no more.
Nope. There it is. There's the required Encanto reference for the night. Yeah, I mean, he's just being really selfish here. Like you said, if we don't talk about him, if I don't bring him up, we won't talk about him.
I know. It's almost like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's like the
ravenous bug bladder beast.
The ravenous bug bladder beast of Trell.
If you can't see it, it thinks it can't see you. Yeah.
Which is, of course, one of the reasons why you always want to have your towel with you, because you just put it over your head.
That's right. You can wrap it around your face. Yep. So yeah, this is a mistake on Sam's part. He really should bring up the fact that Gollum is nearby, but yeah, I guess it'll end up fine.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if he stops right now and says, by the way, guys, I think Gollum's following us.
That is information that Faramir, as a captain of fighting men, would want to know.
Would very much want to know. And I think it also would save some of the headache and hassle that we're going to find with Frodo in the next chapter.
Yeah, that's true.
Where Gollum ends up feeling betrayed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, I said it ends up okay, but it really doesn't end up completely okay, does it?
It definitely harms the relationship between Smeagol and Frodo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, okay, Sam makes a mistake, and now we move on, and that's what I'm going to have you pick up immediately after that.
So they passed on, until the woodlands grew thinner and the land began to fall more steeply. Then they turned aside again to the right, and came quickly to a small river in a narrow gorge. It was the same stream that trickled far above out of the round pool, now grown to a swift torrent, leaping down over many stones in a deep cloven bed, overhung with ilex and dark boxwoods. Looking west, they could see, below them in a haze of light, lowlands and broad meads, and glinting far off in the westering sun, the wide waters of the Anduin. "Here, alas, I must do you a discourtesy," said Faramir. "I hope you will pardon it to one who has so far made his orders give way to courtesy, as not to slay you or to bind you. But it is a command that no stranger, not even one of Rohan that fights with us, shall see the path we now go with open eyes. I must blindfold you." "As you will," said Frodo. "Even the elves do likewise at need, and blindfolded we cross the borders of fair Lothlorien. Gimli the dwarf took it ill, but the hobbits endured it." "It is to no place so fair that I shall lead you," said Faramir. "But I am glad that you will take this willingly, and not by force."
Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the beginning of the passage. So they continue west, as we know, down the slopes of the foothills, and the land begins to fall away. Then they turn aside, and they come upon this small river in a narrow valley. Have we seen this before?
Yep, yeah. And in fact, this was the same river that they'd seen trickling out of the pool, which is now grown by now. It's described as a swift torrent in a deep cloven bed.
It makes sense. It's going down the foothills. It's going to be gaining momentum and probably gathering small little tributary streams.
Additional streams and things.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So then we see the evergreen woods that include the ilex and the dark boxwoods. Sean, do you have anything from Flora of Middle-earth that can help us with these?
I certainly do. I actually started with Hammond and Skull here because they pointed out that ilex can refer to various types of plants, including the common holly. But when I looked in Flora of Middle-earth, I learned that ilex is the name of the genus that holly belongs to, yes. Mm-hmm. But according to Judd and Judd, the word ilex, when used by Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings, always refers to the holm oak, which is actually an oak tree that's also known as the holly oak. It's Quercus ilex, so it's a different genus. In Journey to the Crossroads, there are some other ilexes described there that, to the Judds, who are the botanists here, that are clearly to them representative of holm oaks, not proper hollies.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they think these are, is actually a form of oak tree. As for the boxwoods, this is an evergreen shrub with dark leathery leaves, which Judd and Judd say are widely distributed, including places like southern Europe through the Mediterranean. So it is another one of those plants that we would expect to see in Ithilien with that Mediterranean type of flora.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, I learned from reading their book that the wood of boxwoods is prized by carvers, and in fact, the name boxwood is derived from Latin buxus, which is from Greek pixis, which is the ultimate origin of the word box for a wooden container.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, apparently the ancient Greeks and Romans used to like to make boxes out of boxwood.
Okay, so that's why it's called boxwood.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
Well, going back to the text, now that they're out of the thickest woods, what a sight, right? They can see the meads and lowlands spread before them. I want to see this moment, right? I want the screenshot of this. They can even see the Anduin itself off in the distance. What a view.
It is a gorgeous view.
But they're not going to have it very long.
They're not going to have it for very long because Faramir's got a little bit of bad news for them. And he is very sincerely apologizing for it. He really does not want to do this. He admits it's a discourtesy. He asks for their pardon, but got
to do what you got to do. I mean, he points out that even our allies in Rohan, I mean, the fact is no stranger is allowed to see the road to the place that we're going. So I'm going to have to blindfold you, and I'm just going to leave that there and put no comment.
But Frodo's cool. He's not bothered.
Yeah, that's right. Frodo's totally chill. Oh man, blindfold. All right.
Blindfold away, dude. It's like, we had to go through the same thing when entering Lothlorien.
I love, though, how he throws Gimli under the bus a little bit. I mean, he could have just said even the elves do likewise, but then he has to add, well, Gimli the dwarf took it ill, but true. The hobbits, man, we endured it.
That's such a great call out because Faramir hasn't even met Gimli the dwarf. Why do you
what is the relevance of Gimli the dwarf? Right. I guess he's trying to say, look, we're hobbits and we can endure it.
We were fine. All you had to do is say the elves made us do it. We were cool with it. You
and
don't
we
have to say this dwarf we had in our party.
So if he was finally meets Gimli, he's gonna be like, oh, this is the guy that couldn't handle the blindfold.
Right. Man. But
totally throwing him under the bus. Great stuff.
But then in response to this, Faramir says something that, once again, just shows his deep understanding of the world. It is to no place so fair, of course, as Lothlorien, that I shall lead you.
Oh, I love that. I mean, Faramir's never been there, of course.
No, of
and
course
the
not.
tales of the Golden Wood are, as we know, a bit scary, even in Gondor. They're probably a little scarier in Rohan. But, even in Gondor, this isn't a place that most people would be excited to go to. But Faramir is convinced that it is a fair place.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps, not even perhaps, definitely more fair even than their woodland hideout, which, as we'll see,
as we are going to see,
is incredibly fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
Absolutely. But at least, hey, thanks for doing this willingly.
Yeah.
So Mablung and Damrod are then asked to do the deed and blindfold the hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
Not too tightly, though.
No. And not their hands either, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Faramir trusts them. I love this. He actually says, I would trust you to just keep your eyes closed. But the problem is if you stumble, you're going to open your eyes. So we can't have that. But I trust you not to lift your blindfold. So we don't need to also include handcuffs. I mean, we don't have to bind your hands.
That's a nice touch. I would trust you to keep your eyes closed. That's how much I trust you.
Yeah.
I think you could do this, but you're going to trip.
Yeah. Reflex is reflex and you can't help that. Right.
Exactly. And then he asks Mablung and Damrod to lead the hobbits so they don't falter, which is nice.
Right, because if they falter really badly, they are going to want to reach up with their hands and
True.
See what's going on.
True.
Right.
But that takes us to...
Oh, yes.
We're going to skip one sentence here, and then we're going to pick up our last passage of the episode.
Yes, we will.
And that's going to be in Frodo and Sam's, I would say point of view, but that's not quite accurate.
Point of sensation.
There you go.
All that Frodo and Sam knew of this last mile of the road, they learned from guessing in the dark. After a little, they found that they were on a path descending steeply. Soon it grew so narrow that they went in single file, brushing a stony wall on either side. Their guards steered them from behind with hands laid firmly on their shoulders. Now and again, they came to rough places and were lifted from their feet for a while and then set down again. Always the noise of the running water was on their right hand, and it grew nearer and louder. At length they were halted. Quickly, Mablung and Damrod turned them about several times, and they lost all sense of direction. They climbed upwards a little. It seemed cold, and the noise of the stream had become faint. Then they were picked up and carried down many steps and round a corner. Suddenly they heard the water again, loud now, rushing and splashing. All round them it seemed, and they felt a fine rain on their hands and cheeks. At last they were set on their feet once more. For a moment they stood so, half fearful, blindfold, not knowing where they were, and no one spoke. Then came the voice of Faramir close behind. "Let them see," he said. The scarves were removed and their hoods drawn back, and they blinked and gasped. They stood on a wet floor of polished stone, the doorstep, as it were, of a rough-hewn gate of rock opening dark behind them. But in front, a thin veil of water was hung, so near that Frodo could have put an outstretched arm into it. It faced westward. The level shafts of the setting sun behind beat upon it, and the red light was broken into many flickering beams of ever-changing color. It was as if they stood at the window of some elven tower, curtained with threaded jewels of silver and gold and ruby, sapphire, and amethyst, all kindled with an unconsuming fire.
Wow.
Okay, I want to rent this as my next Airbnb on vacation. This is gorgeous.
That is absolutely beautiful.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. All right, well, let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
The hobbits are blindfolded. Hoods
Right.
are pulled down over their faces as well.
Yeah, and of course the scarves are green. I mean, let's face it, the Rangers' color palette is a little limited.
Yeah, well, they're not going to do bright red in the woods, are they?
No. And I tease. I mean, green's my favorite color anyway, so I have no problem with that.
Is green your favorite color?
Yeah, I think so.
How have we been doing this show for 6 years now, and I didn't know that?
I don't know. It's the color of our logo. It's the color of my car. It's the color of my eyes. It's the color of...
How did I not know that? I mean, green's my favorite color, too.
Yeah. How did I not know that?
I don't know.
That's actually one of the reasons why I got the car I did is the color.
That's so funny.
Isn't it? I know.
So the last mile passes with Frodo and Sam in the dark of their blindfolds.
Yeah.
So we get this from a couple of different senses, not sight, right? We get it from
Right.
feel and from hearing. And we know that they're on a steeply descending path that becomes very narrow with stone walls,
Right.
which apparently they must be able to feel.
Yeah, they're probably brushing up against them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's a couple of rough patches where they actually have to be picked up and set down, which has got to make them feel small.
Well, they are small.
That's true, but
3.5 foot tall and, maybe
but
weighing,
still,
60 pounds.
They don't literally want to be picked up by,
No.
by big folk.
Nobody picks up a hobbit.
Indeed. And then there's the running water to their right, which is growing closer.
Yeah, and that certainly would give them their bearings. But that's why I think we get this variation of pin the tail on the ranger.
Oh, that sounds so fun, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Right.
Yeah.
Spin Frodo and Sam around to disorient them, just like you would a small kid at a birthday party.
Yep.
And after that, they climb up and seemingly away from the water, but then they're picked up again. Thank you very much. Put me down. And they're carried down these steps and around a corner. And now all of a sudden, the water's right there. They can even feel it on their faces in a fine mist.
Mm-hmm. And then Faramir comes up right behind them.
Which, can I just say that's not the coolest thing? They're blindfolded, they're scared, they don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden Faramir comes up behind them. Let them see.
I bet he kneels down too, so his face is right by their ears. Like,
yeah, you could imagine it too.
Yeah, he's like going for like the full dramatic effect here.
The full
Let them see. And man, the drama of this sight.
Oh, what a beautiful sight.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this wet stone floor, what seems to be a doorstep to a large cave behind them.
Yeah, huge cave. But in front, well, if you've ever been on Jungle Cruise, ladies and gentlemen, the backside of water.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the first thing that comes through my mind, which is sad because this is really the backside of a gorgeous waterfall.
Yeah.
The timing of it's perfect. If they'd gotten here earlier or later, it would not have this impact. But the fact that they got here right at this exact time, the setting sun, parallel rays right into the water, it's beating on this veil of water, and it's changing color as the light is broken in the prisms of the water droplets. Gorgeous.
Absolutely gorgeous. And even the simile is gorgeous. The narrator describes it as like the window of an elven tower.
Yeah.
With precious metals and jewels, silver, gold, ruby, sapphire, amethyst, all kindled with an unconsuming fire.
What a line, an unconsuming fire. So we've got this flame, but a flame that doesn't destroy.
It's just light and beauty.
Oh,
wow.
Man. Like the window of some elven tower curtained with threaded jewels of silver and gold. In other words, nothing like Bartleman's mailroom at all.
Wonderfully segued.
I hope
Very
so.
Nicely done.
Well, Sean, what do we have in the bag tonight?
All right. Well, last week we introduced our first audio question, and tonight we have another one. This time, Inigo from Madrid reached out and asked this.
Hello, Sean. Hello, Alan. Greetings from Madrid. As a faithful listener to your podcast, I immediately thought of you when a friend of mine asked me a Tolkien-related question. We are both big fans, and he wanted my help in choosing a phrase from the Middle-earth legendarium to engrave on his wedding ring. So I, in turn, am asking for your help. What Tolkien quote would you suggest for a wedding ring? Thank you very much, guys.
All right. I really like this question.
That's a fun one.
It is a fun one. Alan, I'm going to let you start.
Of course you will. This is an interesting question. I admit I've really struggled with this, not because there aren't a gazillion beautiful and powerful quotes that talk about earthly love, but honestly, because most of them aren't short enough to fit onto a ring.
I had some.
That's the biggest problem, isn't it? I'll tell you some of the ones I came up with. You tell me the ones you came up with. The first one that came to my mind was the line from Haldir when he says, "The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places. But still there is much that is fair. And though in all lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater." Now, I guess we could find a way to shorten it somehow, but it would need to be paraphrased, and then it's just not a quote anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love this line. I mean, it's so true, right? The world is full of danger. This is true today as it was in Middle-earth, right? Mm-hmm. The world is a very dangerous place, but there's much that is still incredibly beautiful. And while grief is present everywhere, it is a fallen world and bad things happen all the time. The presence of grief often allows love to grow even greater, to overcome that grief. And, you know, I know a young couple just starting out might not want to think about grief, but it's a reality, and facing that grief together can strengthen their love.
Yeah, well, and sometimes, you know, that love can be a refuge from grief as well. You know, the strength of that love can be what keeps you going. And it is a lovely line. It is a bit long. And I'm with you. Like, you don't want to paraphrase it. You want to keep a quote.
You really do.
I had much the same challenge. You know, the first thing that I thought of when I heard this question was, you know, something from the story of Beren and Luthien.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, not that I want Inigo's friend and his fiancée to have to face off against werewolves and vampires and demons to get to their wedding day.
Let alone that he has to lose a hand.
Right. None of that is good.
No.
Worst bachelor party ever.
Seriously. What'd you do for your bachelor party? Well, I fought a giant dog and
lost my hand. But, you know.
And died of poison, by the way.
The dog burned up from the inside, though, so that was pretty cool.
That was epic, man.
Totally epic. But no, I mean, it is a classic love story in the Legendarium, kind of the classic love story in the Legendarium.
Without doubt.
But what passage to choose, right?
That's the thing. I thought the same thing, because of course my mind went to Beren and Luthien, but then I was like, what? That's a whole book.
So many are so long. Like, I'm looking at like whole verses from the Lay of Lathian. Right. Like, no, can't do that.
No.
So I did find one in the Silmarillion, which I thought was a good place to start. But as she looked on him, doom fell upon her, and she loved him. Now, that is quite lovely, I think. And that isn't a bad one, although it occurs to me that it's a bit one-sided.
Without context, because he already had fallen for her.
Right, exactly.
Right, but yeah, you're right. Without context, it's very one-sided.
Without context, it says nothing about the groom loving the bride.
No.
And even without that, I suppose maybe not everybody out there, even Tolkien fans, is going to want the word doom on their wedding ring. So,
even understanding that in this case, it doesn't mean quite what you think it means.
But still, it's not what you want.
Good point.
I did go to the Lay of Lathian for that moment in the poem, and it has a slightly different text, which I also like. In the poem, it's, "As love there woke in sweet surprise, the starlight trembled in her eyes."
Ooh.
And I do love that.
That's pretty.
And, you know, anytime starlight is mentioned, you know, I'm going to love that. But again, it's still a little bit one-sided. And,
that's fair. And
I also think, you know, depending on the groom, you know, maybe you don't care for the implication that the bride is, I don't know, surprised to fall in love with you.
A fair point. I don't know. Maybe it's the trembling starlight that's a surprise and not the love awaking.
Maybe.
I don't think so. I think
I don't think so, but
I think the love is in sweet surprise.
That's
You're
what
right.
I think.
Well, you know, after the Haldir quote, and I knew that you were probably going to go to Beren and Luthien because that's where I wanted to go at first. I actually thought I'd take a look at the letters, right? I mean, I know that Tolkien, obviously, you know, he loved his wife deeply.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why the Beren and Luthien relationship is so amazing, right? We know we've talked about how he viewed her as his Luthien. And Tolkien wrote a lot about marriage, both in his letters to his sons and in a letter to C.S. Lewis. But I have to say, something tells me that Inigo's friend won't want anything from this passage from a letter to Tolkien's son Michael, but because I came upon it, I have to share it. Tolkien says, women are instinctively, when uncorrupt, monogamous. Men are not. No good pretending. Men just ain't, not by their animal nature, end quote.
Oh,
we're going to get letters.
Professor, come on.
Oh, my goodness.
He wrote that to his son.
To his son. And he even emphasized that men are not, as in italics. Men are not. No good pretending. Men just ain't. He uses the word ain't, and you know
Professor.
It's pretty bad.
Professor Tolkien.
Oh, my goodness.
No, that's not the one anybody wants.
So that's not going on the wedding ring.
No.
I'm also pretty sure this quote from Tolkien's letter to C.S. Lewis won't make the wedding invitation either.
Oh, gosh.
Tolkien at this point is talking about a couple who got married twice, once in a church with a priest, and the second time for the state with a registrar. Now, Tolkien feels this is ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, he actually says that. I think this is ridiculous. Then he adds that it was only not ridiculous on the assumption that the state was in fact saying by implication, I do not recognize the existence of your church. You may have taken certain vows in your meeting place, but they are just foolishness, private taboos, a burden you take on yourself. A limited and impermanent contract is all that is really necessary for citizens, end quote. So, yeah, I don't think we should suggest a limited and impermanent contract for the text on the ring.
Oh, man.
That's not going to go over any better than I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. Probably also shouldn't go on the ring.
That should go on the invitation.
That should go on the wedding invite, right? The program. Yeah.
But, oh, man, Professor, well...
I know. I had to share those, though. I mean, I was genuinely looking for good stuff, and I ran across that.
It is kind of funny, but it's also like, dude, man, I don't want to hear this, Professor.
I know. I don't want to have my image of Professor Tolkien slightly damaged.
I know. Oh man, that's
ouch.
That's fun though.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
All right. Well, I did look for a few more good ones.
I'm glad you did. I did too. Don't worry. We'll come to another one.
I know you got a couple more in here. You know, I went looking in the Tale of Aragorn and Arwen.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem with that is that while there are some lovely passages, thematically, it's all the same stuff as Beren and Luthien. You know, it's a lot of like doom and mortality and stuff like that.
Immortal woman giving up immortality to marry the yeah.
It's beautiful stuff, but
gorgeous. Yeah.
Again, maybe just not the best thing for a wedding ring.
No.
There is, of course, always the courtship of my favorite character, Éowyn.
The place I was going to go, right?
Of course.
With Faramir, my favorite character. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some really good passages there. Okay. Maybe not the one about taming a wild shield maiden of the north.
Yeah, maybe not.
But there's always this one. And he took her in his arms and kissed her under the sunlit sky. And he cared not that they stood high upon the walls in the sight of many.
If you think you're reading that when we get there, you're wrong. We're going to draw straws for that one.
I don't know. Might have to fight for that one.
Yeah, maybe.
That's pretty on the nose for a wedding day.
Oh,
I guess.
Perfect. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen at your wedding.
Right.
It is a bit long, though. Maybe that one's not a good one either.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to very, very, very tiny font. Yeah.
There you go.
As I mentioned, I think we mentioned, that should go on the invite, right? I almost think if we're talking about a marriage that already is, and he wants to engrave this on his ring that he's already been wearing for a few years, it's a different story. But if we're talking about a wedding that's coming up, maybe some of these quotes would be better used in the program, the little piece of paper that everybody gets when they go into the wedding.
Yeah.
Because some of these, the verses from Beren and Luthien, for instance, from Lay of Lathian, there's some really
that's true. There's some good ones in there.
But getting it on the ring itself, it's got to be smaller. And that's the thing. So much from that Faramir Éowyn story that I love too, they're all just a bit wordy for the ring. But there is a poem that I found, digging a little deeper now, in the Adventures of Tom Bombadil. And it's called Shadow Bride. And there's a line in there that I rather like, and it might be the only one that I found, at least, that could fit on a ring. Now, to give you some context, the poem is about a man who dwelt alone, who sat as still as carven stone, until a lady clad in gray came and danced with him. Now, the final stanza is sad. She now dwells below. She only comes up once a year. But it's the last two lines that strike me. They danced together then till dawn, and a single shadow make.
Huh.
I love
That's
that.
a good one. I like that one.
It's yeah.
In context, there's some sadness there, but
when you take it out of context, all of a sudden it actually works. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool. I like that. That one could actually work.
Mm-hmm.
I actually found one that might work too. And I think this is probably my final answer. This is another one from Faramir and Eowyn. And it's, in this hour, I do not believe that any darkness will endure.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Now, look, it doesn't say anything specific about courtship or marriage or love, but it's certainly the kind of thing I would quote in a letter to my wife.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the kind of thing I would love to have on a wedding ring. So.
It's a hopeful thing. There is no darkness that will endure that can, cast a shadow on our marriage kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. And it's the reminder that, this person that you're marrying, hopefully, I hope that it's someone that makes you feel that way, that no darkness will endure when you're with that person.
Yes.
That's lovely.
I love that.
So
that really is.
That was a lot of fun. So Inigo, thank you for that question. And for your friend, I hope something in all of that helps.
I do too.
Well, Alan, do we have time for one more?
I think we do, Sean. Jeff P. asks this fun one. In at least 2 spots in The Lord of the Rings, someone compares Gollum to a black squirrel. Given that Gollum is relatively hobbit-sized, I have to ask, how big do squirrels get in Middle-earth? Well, now, let me tell you, Jeff, giant mutant black squirrels just happen to be my co-host's specialty on the grill.
Oh.
Sean?
Oh, yeah. On the grill.
I'm kidding. You boil them. What are you talking about?
Oh man, you gotta get the big ones, the big black ones. Those are going to be the tastiest.
Oh
no! Wow. So you're just pitching this one to me. All right.
Yeah, of course I am.
I guess this is what I get for picking a tough one in the mailbag.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what we can do here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start by looking at the text to see the moments that Jeff is thinking of here.
Right.
To be fair, we both looked in the text. We both even used our handy-dandy ebook word searches, and we could only find maybe 1.5 places where Gollum is compared to a black squirrel.
Or to a squirrel of any color?
Or to a squirrel of any color. Yeah, you'll see what we mean right here. The first passage is actually going to come next week, when Anborn, the ranger, says, "But I saw, or thought I saw, something a little strange. It was getting deep dusk when the eyes make things greater than they should be. So perhaps it may have been no more than a squirrel." Sam pricked up his ears at this. "Yet if so, it was a black squirrel, and I saw no tail. 'Twas like a shadow on the ground, and it whisked behind a tree trunk when I drew nigh, and went up aloft as swift as any squirrel could. You will not have us slay wild beasts for no purpose, and it seemed no more, so I tried no arrow. It was too dark for sure shooting anyway, and the creature was gone into the gloom of the leaves in a twinkling. But I stayed for a while, for it seemed strange, and then I hastened back. I thought I heard the thing hiss at me from high above as I turned away." Not very squirrel-like that, but okay.
No.
"A large squirrel, maybe," Anborn says. "Perhaps under the shadow of the unnamed, some of the beasts of Mirkwood are wandering hither to our woods. They have black squirrels there, 'tis said."
Ah, yes, the rare black hissing squirrel. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Anborn, your degree in zoology will be coming soon.
He obviously failed his wildlife test in
think
ranger school.
He got through on some other power because it wasn't that.
He was legacy.
He was legacy. I love it. So the second or half mention will come in our next chapter. When Faramir sees Gollum, he asks Anborn, "Now what would you say that it is, Anborn? A squirrel or a kingfisher? Are there black kingfishers in the night pools of Mirkwood?" But Faramir isn't really comparing Gollum to a squirrel here. He's simply, kind of mocking Anborn. He's referencing Anborn's earlier comment about Gollum being a black squirrel out of Mirkwood. He's really refuting that earlier comment, like saying, dude, that is so obviously not a squirrel.
Anborn, you idiot. How did you think that was a squirrel?
Anborn, what is wrong with you, man? Yeah.
And it hissed. Squirrels don't hiss. And they don't walk around with fish hanging out of their mouths.
I thought it might have been a hissing squirrel, boss. I hear Mirkwood's got black hissing squirrels.
So
I kind of now picture Anborn as like the really dumb muscle guy. You know? Just
right, yeah.
"Okay, boss.
Okay,
whatever
boss.
you say, I'm gonna go hurt him."
Poor Anborn. All right. So
I'm sure he's a really smart guy, but not very good at recognizing squirrels.
No. So the question really is right back to Anborn.
It really
Why
is.
does Anborn, and only Anborn, really actually think Gollum might be a black squirrel and not something else? Honestly, as much fun as it is
It is fun. Poor Anborn.
Failing his wildlife exam.
He rolled a natural 1 on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see a creature about 3.5 feet tall climbing a tree.
Yeah.
Roll your perception. 1. You think it might be a squirrel.
Right. Yeah. And if the DM's really feeling snarky, you're just like, and you put out your eyes while looking at it, you know.
Exactly.
You poke yourself in the eye while looking. No, I mean, truthfully, as much fun as it is, I think the answer is actually there in the text. And I think
so too.
I think Anborn deserves a little bit more credit than we're giving him.
Mm-hmm.
He admits that it was getting dark.
Yeah.
And he assumed that the dark was playing tricks on his eyes. He assumed that the dark was making things greater than they should be. He knew what he
meaning
saw
bigger, right? Greater meaning larger.
Greater. Yeah, exactly. Right. Not like that's the greatest squirrel I've ever seen, man. It's great. He's got sunglasses and a top hat.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, Sean, that's brilliant right there.
No, he knew what he saw was way too big for a squirrel. And, he knew that it didn't have a tail. So he knows there are things about it that are not squirrel-like, but there's just nothing else that he'd ever experienced that he could liken it to.
Right.
Pretty sure emaciated cannibal halfling is not one of the things that shows up on the wildlife test.
Probably not. Probably
not something Anborn ever imagined was an option available on that particular multiple choice test. So I suppose it's not that crazy that he looks at it as like, gee, I don't know what that is. I don't know, a squirrel? I mean,
maybe a big squirrel?
Maybe it's a big squirrel. I don't know. Maybe it's not as big as it looks. It's kind of dark.
I can't really tell because it's kind of dark and it's shadowy. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit like Kronk from Emperor's New Groove, right? It's just like, I don't know, squirrel. And he just goes back to making muffins,
That was hilarious. Except that, of course, Kronk actually speaks squirrel. You remember?
He does. That's right. I forgot about that.
He completely forgot that.
He's teaching the scouts to speak squirrel at the end, isn't he?
He doesn't really want to talk to you. Squeak, squeaker, squeaking, McSqueaker.
Right. We may have found a fictional character who knows less about squirrels than we would expect Kronk to. That's amazing.
Oh my goodness. You picked the right one and the wrong one at the same time. That was well done.
That's absolutely amazing.
That was great, Sean. Man.
No, I think Anborn recognized it. He didn't really think that a squirrel should be that big, but he just
knew this was a reach.
He knew it was a reach. He just wasn't sure of what he saw, and he didn't have any other hole to put it in. So,
no, it might have been easier to say, so I have no idea what it was. That might have been the better answer,
right.
But it wouldn't have been as entertaining, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But please be sure to join us again next week when we look towards Numenor that was and beyond Elvenhome that is.
And to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. But folks, we want to take a moment to thank the team that helps make this show better. That's our research assistants, along with our Barlaman, Becca Davis, producer Jordan Rennells, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, and website guru Phil Dean.
And speaking of the website, please be sure to go visit us there at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, as well as our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
And definitely check out our library page. You know we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, and we've provided links for you to get nearly every book we mentioned on the show. And we do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so thank you.
Now we want to thank some more really important people, our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'm going to start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, and Kathy from North Carolina.
And then we have Lori from Washington, Carlos in California, Brian from the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Hal from Washington, D.C., Lise in Switzerland, Dylan in Australia, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, and Dorwin in Michigan. Thank you all so very much for your support, folks. And everyone out there listening, please be sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast app is.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, the keys to your elven tower curtained with jewels of silver and gold to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want a chance to have your actual voice heard, well, you can send us audio of you asking your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Just make sure to still send the question to Barliman if you don't mind, please.
Yeah.
Now, Barliman's a lot more reliable lately, but we do get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you as soon as we can, and your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
farewell, friends.